16, you all seen there?
Hi, and welcome to another episode of On the Job with PORAC. I'm Brian Marvel, president of PORAC. With me is PORAC Vice President Damon Kurtz. Today we're hosting PORAC's legislative advocate, Randy Perry of Aaron Reed & Associates, to cover our state's latest legislative updates. Welcome back, Randy. We always appreciate it when you come in.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We have a lot of stuff to talk about, obviously. February 19th was the last day to introduce legislation. I think Aaron sent over like 2,300 total bills, I think, that were introduced. History with us, you actually worked for us at one time, and now you work for Aaron Reed. And I say this everywhere I go, PORAC has the best legislative advocates in Sacramento. Aaron Reed & Associates are second to none, and I'm extremely grateful for that, considering just in my 3 years here, it's been pretty tumultuous at the Capitol in regards to legislation. I think even with COVID-19 and now in 2021 with hopefully we're flattening the curve down to zero on the COVID stuff. First, why don't we just start off to get your perspective of how it's been to be an advocate in Sacramento under COVID-19, because we recently had a guest in here, Assemblymember Jim Cooper, and we talked about it from a legislative perspective as a legislature. It'd be good to get your perspective as an advocate who actually has to work the halls and deal with face-to-face relationships. Damon and I talk about this a lot. It's just we're sort of zoomed out. I don't know if you're as effective as you can be on a Zoom call versus in face-to-face. So what are your thoughts about the complete changing of the way that we're legislating in Sacramento under COVID-19?
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, the last 3 years have been not just tumultuous, but I mean, obviously law enforcement's had a target on their backs. So the importance of walking the halls over at the Capitol has never been more impacting. To not be able to do that, to not be able to walk into each office, you know, one of the strategies that I have is when I really need to work a bill, I go up to the 6th floor cafeteria, I have a cup of coffee or a couple shots of caffeine, not alcohol. I wish I did. That's before I get into the Capitol. And then I just start on the 6th floor and I just walk my way down the stairs and hit every office on the floor until I get down to the 1st floor. To not be able to do that at all is unbelievably handcuffing. The positive aspect of it is this. Right now, the way I am working to try and get votes on certain issues, or at least educate them on positions that PORAC has, I am literally calling and texting members directly. The rule is you can't do that when you're in the Capitol and they're on the floor. You're not supposed to do that. They have rules against that. But with COVID, I mean, it's just like them calling me, you know, when they call for fundraisers and stuff like that, right? They can call me directly. I call them directly. So in a way, it's been more successful in that sense that I can talk to them and that they will answer their phone, right? But I mean, literally being able to just pick up the phone, calling them directly or texting them and getting an answer back right away has been very effective.
But to add to that, you know, it's like, you know, I did some interviews last year after the last legislative session, and, you know, the reporter had said that it was unfair that we had phone numbers of elected officials. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, but every advocate in the Capitol probably has exactly the same thing that you have, in a sense that they're able to call these people just like we are. There's no unfair burden, or I don't know if burden's the right word, but there's just everybody has an equal footing when it comes to being able to call legislatures and talk to them. It's unique to hear that, you know, it's having to move from the face-to-face to the phone call. But I think you as a person and what you do, you have a unique skill set in that you're very personable. You're able to, have those kind of conversations on a face-to-face level and advocate for PORAC's positions, which I think is a huge bonus for us as an organization, because whoever sits in our seats, you're here. You're the consistent voice. You know the track record. You've been with us for, 100 years. But the reality is, I think people that have the skills that you have and the fact of being able to communicate effectively, either face to face or on the phone, is huge for PORAC, and I really appreciate that.
And it's interesting your perspective on that. It's almost been as effective to a certain extent having that direct contact with the member, because we were just talking, last year especially, it was new to us, and it was very frustrating from the outside looking in, feeling like we were being boxed out, if you will, of conversations, because it's really difficult to get that access. But because of your years of being in the building, you technically really have that access. You already have all those contacts and those relationships that are already built in, which is helpful for you. And then obviously what I was thinking too was, what folks don't realize too is how much influence their individual staff has on their decision making, and their biases and opinions weigh into how they communicate that to the member. And you're in a way bypassing that staff and going directly to the member with the issues, and can maybe educate them a little better that the message doesn't get filtered, I guess. So maybe that's a positive that I didn't really see of this, what's going on.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I talk with a lot of staff. I mean, I'll be honest with you. The staff in the building are very important. I mean, for the reasons you state, they're the ones who are doing the deep dive on the bills, and then they just give the overview to the member. And then if the member, depending on the member, a lot of them do the deep dives themselves, that a lot of times the member just goes by what the staffer has gleaned from the bill. So that's an important part, but the staff is important. I mean, I communicate a lot with the ledge directors.
Yeah,
and
I
all
didn't
that.
mean to insinuate you didn't. Just it was just kind of an interesting dynamic there, because a lot of times staff runs interference for them because they're busy.
Yeah, that's their job.
That's their job, and they're busy, and they do a lot of the research for them. But as our experience in advocacy and lobbying with both here and at the federal level, you can usually tell from the demeanor of the staff on whether or not they're receptive of what you're talking about or not.
Right.
And you realize right away that you're going to have to put more work in this office, and at some point you need to actually get in with the member themselves. Otherwise, the message is not really going to get there the way you want it to be conveyed.
Yeah. One last thing on that is just the negative impact of the COVID issue has been testifying.
Yes.
I mean, to sit there and just call in and tell your position in 2 seconds is ridiculous. I mean, I am so used to sitting. Aaron and I both will sit at the table, look members in the eyes, answer their questions, read their, kind of the way they're looking at you and all that, on whether or not you need to maybe put a little more effort into that lobby of that member is no longer available. I mean, so that's the difficulty. There's the walk in the hall thing, but there's also the face-to-face on testimony, and that has been a negative impact.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Damon and I, when we testify at some of these other groups, it's all Zoom, and sometimes the Zoom there's no visual. It's just your voice of trying to express our message, which is a little frustrating because, like you said, our professions and your profession is reading people and what they look like and how they're handling what you're telling them. So yeah, that is interesting. And obviously, with COVID-19 and the vaccines being rolled out, hopefully we can have another conversation about what kind of changes and how we adapt to maybe the new environment post COVID-19. But with that said, obviously, one of the biggest bills that we're working on this year is Senate Bill 387, the LEARN Act. Senator Portantino is carrying that for us. And the good thing about the Zoom is, and I think Damon will agree, is it's allowed Damon and I to actually, I think we've attended every single chapter meeting that's happened since January, which is huge because a lot of times when we weren't doing Zoom, we would have to travel. PORAC has 15 chapters now. sometimes it's difficult to get around the state for so many meetings per month. But there's this, and I've run into this in several places, is obviously we have our SB 387. Assembly member Reggie Jones Sawyer introduced Assembly Bill 89 shortly after us. And I think a lot of our members are looking at his bill thinking it's our bill. And I guess let's talk a little bit about his bill. So his bill requires, in order for you to go to the police academy in the state of California prospectively, you have to be 25 years old and you have to have a bachelor's degree. I think that's pretty much the premise.
Correct.
And then now you have our bill, SB 387, the LEARN Act, which is a little bit different. Why don't we hit a couple bullet points on that one?
Sure. We started out thinking about trying to at least mandate an AA degree, a community college degree. And the whole idea is we have several studies that have shown, we have 4 specifically, that have shown that the more education an officer has, more college education an officer has, the less likely they are to use force or will use force later on in the interaction with somebody on the street. That the studies have shown they have better communication skills and the like. Obviously, that's an overview of thousands and thousands of officers around the country reviewed. But so the idea was, and many legislators at the end of last year started talking about more education for officers and more training. And so that's what kind of kicked it off. And then when they had the first hearing during the fall of the subcommittee, of the Assembly Subcommittee on Police Reform, that was the main topic where they kept going back to education. So we sat down and thought about trying to implement an AA degree. The problem was when we started talking to members about, especially labor-oriented members like Lorena Gonzalez and others, their concern was that law enforcement is still a profession where a high school diploma qualifies you to be able to go into the academy. Obviously, there's a lot of other requirements once you get there in terms of backgrounds, but education-wise, it was for the average high school diploma person to have a career. And their concern was we were taking away that career from someone with a high school diploma.
And absolutely. We're still seen as a blue-collar profession. And even though I think over the years we've morphed into much more technical than we've ever been, with computers and the different sciences involved with law enforcement and specialties that you can go into. But at the base level, when you're coming in, it's a blue collar job, and I think it's important that we try to keep that, and I think that's what we're trying to do with this bill, is to try to keep that ability for folks coming out who don't want to go to college, a career that they can go and make a living in and make an impact in their communities.
And the way we drafted the bill is we kept that where you can go into the academy with a high school diploma, but by the time you finish the academy, complete your probation, and you get your basic post certificate on the street, you will have taken college courses, therefore, that are specific about things that you will need and tools you will need to be a cop on today's streets. And so that was the idea, and that's how we drafted it. The bill does 2 other things. It also sets up a recruitment task force, statewide task force on recruitment, and then also sets up a grant program for underprivileged individuals who financially, cannot afford to go to the academy, will be able to get grants. And we're still working on how those would be dispersed right now. So those are the 3 things that the LEARN Act does.
Yeah, and I think it's important to focus on that, and I've really tried to express to the members that our bill does nothing to prevent somebody with just a high school education to enter the police academy and become a peace officer. Our goal was to provide resources and the ability for people to attain a bachelor's degree or higher education and have it funded through state grants has really been the focus of this. And, one of the other important pieces, the statewide task force addressing the recruiting and retention. I think if you look around the state, some places are having big issues with that. And it could be for a variety of reasons. The narrative on law enforcement, just not wanting to go into the profession of what's going on right now. Wanting to be a career, especially minorities or people of color, they experience even more pressure from within their own communities to not be a peace officer, which is a shame, because those are the folks that we really want to recruit. We want to bring them into the profession. We want to bring more women into the profession. We want to open it up and expand it. And I think another part of our bill was, trying to get officers into the schools to be able to show the younger kids that this is a great profession. It's a great middle-class job with retirement security. And I think Assemblywoman Gonzalez hits the point on the head. She does not want to close that door. And I don't think we should.
Right. And I don't think we should. Absolutely. And I think the other part, Brian and I, we've had this conversation several times, is that and it was painfully evident over the last 2-3 years of legislation and focus on law enforcement, and we often revert back to, well, we'll create a training for this, we'll create a training for that, and that's nothing new. Law enforcement's in a constant state of change, and new tactics, new policies, new procedures. But what we recognized was our academy was still pretty much the same it was when I went through 27 years ago, as far as the amount of hours, but the content now is expanded, exponentially, and that trying to fit it into that window is very, very difficult. So how do we do something to put training and classes together that maybe goes outside of the academy, because I know we are limited to that, and funding's an issue, right? Departments aren't going to want to put someone in school for a year and not get any productivity out of them during that time frame. So there's that. Where's that balancing act that pushes departments away from putting people through the academy and expecting you to do it yourself, which a lot of the smaller agencies do. So how do we do that? And I think this accomplishes that. You still go to the academy, you still be hired, but after being hired and you're working and you're doing the job, you have these additional classes that are going to be there for you to help you be more successful in your career and also serving the community in a better way. So I think that's the goal.
In addition, with our bill, this is a 10-year bill. This isn't something that we're trying to push over the line and it starts next year in 2023 or 2024. This is something that we want to talk to researchers. We want to talk to people that are, specialized. We want to get together with the folks at the university system, the state system, the junior colleges, because I think another component in our bill is trying to craft a bill that's specific, sort of like a nursing program. So it would be like a police science bill versus a criminal justice, to where the focus would be on how to improve and be a better officer to serve our communities. And I think our bill is a very good avenue of taking a look at it and giving us the time to craft this and work on it and make sure we do it right over these 10 years. With that said, what kind of feedback are you hearing from the members? Prospects? Are we in good shape, or is this going to be one of these things where it's too onerous? And my biggest fear is when it comes to elected folks, they're real big into instant gratification on legislation. This is a 10-year bill. Some folks may not even be here when this comes to fruition and becomes reality. So be interested to hear your thoughts and perspective on that.
Yeah, well, to clarify, the bill would take effect January 1st of 22, like any normal bill. And then what the bill calls for is for posts to get together with CSU, UC, and community colleges to create these courses that we're talking about. And they would then be implemented prospectively. The goal being, by the end of this decade, this is PORAC school, by the end of this decade, to have the best trained and educated officers in the world, in California. And that's the idea, to have that specific law enforcement degree that officers will be able to have to be better officers on the street. So that's the idea. In terms of, the politics of it, we're going to try to sit down with Mr. Jones Sawyer. He's the chair of the Assembly Public Safety Committee. See if we can work together on one education bill, see if that's doable. I think he is going to have issues with his bill simply because I've already heard a couple of members who feel that requiring with the 25-year requirement and the 4-year degree requirement that you actually can hurt the ability of lower income individuals or minorities to be able to get into the profession because they don't have the opportunities perhaps to go to a 4-year college and get a 4-year degree and the like. So, and by age 25, maybe they're already, maybe they're taking care of their families, and they, maybe all the kids in the family have to work in order to make enough money to pay the rent. So I think that could have a negative impact on what we're trying to do, and that is to recruit more minorities and get those minority officers back into the neighborhoods where they grew up. That's part of the idea of the bill.
Yeah, I think the age 25 was a little shocking to hear because, so even if you go to college right out of high school, so you graduate at say 22, you're starting a career. You're going to be 3 years into a career, and then you're going to decide, hey, I'm going to have to go through this police academy. I'm going to spend another year back in training at 25, probably getting a substantially reduced pay, going through the academy to start a whole new career where you've already spent 3 years building yourself up within a business. I don't know. I don't understand the thought process on that, and I just think it would be very detrimental for law enforcement throughout the state. Well, I know we wanted to talk a little bit about other legislation, but it looks like this is going to be a podcast on SB 387. I want to thank you for all joining us on our latest episode of On the Job with PORAC. We hope you enjoyed it. We'd like to take this time to say thank you to all our PORAC members and our nation's law enforcement. Be safe and have a great day. PORAC is California's largest law enforcement organization and the largest statewide association in the nation, representing over 77,000 public safety members since 1953. Our monthly podcasts, as well as past episodes, are available on PORAC.org, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, PORAC's YouTube channel, or where popular podcasts are downloaded. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms and tag us with your suggestions for future show topics. To learn more about our organization, visit us at PORAC.org. We are PORAC.